I think we're ready to clamp the two rear parts of the shell together. So this is why I designed this little ridge on the two halves to allow me to clamp them together like this. I just thought it was a much more sensible way of being able to make sure that they're perfectly aligned. Also, I printed the quick release, which is going to go on the back like this, and luckily the holes line up perfectly, and this will add some strength once that's bolted on. That will keep the two halves together as well. And yeah, it's perfect. So this is a new one that I've printed, which is perfectly aligned, which is great. There's an arrow which shows you the top, and that's going to go on there. So the idea with this is that I'll epoxy glue them together, and it will sit flat while it sets and be clamped together. And I'm just going to use some epoxy glue to get them to set. And this whole thing, the back of it's going to be wrapped in carbon fiber sheet as well, and laminated in epoxy, so it'll be absolutely strong enough. And like I mentioned before, the front piece, when that goes on, has its joint in a slightly different spot across the top here. So that offset should give it quite a lot of strength. But yeah, it's printed in carbon fiber PLA, then wrapped in carbon fiber. The strengthener through the middle will be plenty strong enough. To help this set in place, what I've done is put it on top of a metal box, which is just a headphone amplifier, which is a metal container. And I've put two really strong magnets on either side just to keep it flat, so that'll keep it nice and true while it's drying. After 24 hours, these are my two bits bonded together. They're super strong. I've tried to bend them, and actually the whole body bends rather than bending in the spot where the joint is, so it's obviously super strong. And the bottom section here, so that's really well bonded and super tough and perfectly flat, so great, no warpage at all. And the next step will be to carbon fiber wrap, and I might actually do the bottom first. And I mean, it's not going to be seen, but it's a good test to build up my skill, and also it'll look legitimate. Then the whole thing will be carbon fiber on the top as well. I think the top will be tricky with all the shapes, but basically I can lay it over the top, and then I can just cut around here to cut the carbon fiber out that's not required, because these have got the button holders that go in there. But I'm really happy. I think it's going to be excellent. So the inspiration for skinning my 3D modeling carbon fiber came from Easy Composites, which you can find on YouTube. Excellent channel, really the best channel for carbon fiber skinning, production, models, all different types of things. You can buy the materials online if you're in the UK. I'll put a link to an Australian company that you can buy supplies off as well if you're in Australia. But yeah, really excellent. It takes you through all the steps, and if you just follow those, you can't go wrong and you'll get great results. So let's skin the wheel. Right, so I've unrolled my carbon fiber that I got, but unfortunately they've just stuck sticky tape across it, so it's all stretched and wrecked. So I might be able to use bits of that for something else, but I'm going to try to pick an unmolested section to put my piece on, and I might actually do it like that, so then I have some excess to clean up the edges and that sort of stuff. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to put some painter's sticky tape down here and then cut it so it doesn't fray. So let's try that. So I've got the piece actually anchored down with a vise, and it's nice and tight, so I can lay the carbon fiber over the top of it. So first thing I'm going to do is clean it up with some grease and oil remover, and then I'm going to paint the whole top with the epoxy mix. So here I just got some wax and grease remover, and I'm just going to go over it everywhere and make sure it's got absolutely no oil on it. So it's 2-to-1, so I've mixed up 34 of the clear to 17 of the hardener to make 51. Also mixing some black pigment in as well, just to give it an even sort of color on the item. Now I'm just going to apply this, and it's going to give us a nice sticky coat to put the carbon fiber on top of. This will take a few hours probably to get tacky, and that's when we'll lay the carbon fiber on. Okay, so I've put that base coat on. That was probably, look, I've got tons left over. I mixed up there, you know, it was 34 to 17. Could have done half of that much, so like, you know, could have gone something like 18 to 9 or that sort of blend. But anyway, I've put that on, and we'll just leave it now to go tacky. Might take a little while, we'll come and check it. Then when it's ready, we'll lay the carbon fiber over the top, which I've cut. So the carbon fiber is now cut here, and we'll be able to lay that over the top and get it to stick. So this is the top of the wheel here. So I actually put a lot of attention into this part to make sure this was even, because this is what you're going to see the most, the top of the wheel. And in the center of it has the mount, so that's not as critical. But yeah, it's just try to get it to look as good as possible. And these are all actually fixed. There's no problem there. It looks a bit bubbly, but it's actually not. It's just the way it looks on the video. But once this is dried for another 4 or 3 hours, probably 4 hours in this temperature, because it's about 12 degrees in here, I'll denib it, cut it right close to the edge so it's all neat before I put the top coat on. So actually liking the way it's looking. And actually much less smell than I thought. It's actually, you could do this inside, wouldn't be a problem. Yeah, coming together. Well, I've gone around and trimmed just the dags off the bottom. There's still a little bit there, which I'll clean up later, but I don't want to actually cause it to pull at all. So playing it pretty safe. But yeah, ready to put the next coat of lacquer on. I'll leave that overnight. So now I'm just basically wetting it, and I'm following the direction of the weave so that I avoid pulling it. And it just basically wet it all down. All the way around. Especially on the ends here, to keep them down. Well, there's the first coat done, and I'll let that dry overnight, maybe 8, 10, 12 hours, and then I'm going to give it a sand back to roughen it up, and then I'll put the final coats on, trim it up and do the final coats. Here's my part after drying overnight, and I've trimmed the edges. And I used some CA glue, hobby glue, just to stick a few of the frayed threads and that sort of thing around the outside down. And it's not perfect. There's a few little twists there, but once it's all covered in with the resin, it should be great. So the next stage is to abrade it, which is basically roughen up the surface with some 120 grit sandpaper, and then I'll give it 3 coats of epoxy with about 2 hours, maybe 3 hours drying time in between. But yeah, I'm very happy with that. I think it looks slick. Right, so I roughened it all up, got it nice and smooth, and then gave it a good clean with some grease and wax remover. And now I'm going to do my first coat of clear. And I'm going to mix it 2 to 1, put it on quite thick, and then leave that to dry for about probably 2.5 hours, and do another 2 coats, or another 1 coat, another 2.5 hours break, and then another coat. We'll see how it looks. Well, there's the first thick clear coat. And now that is going to stand for about 2.5 hours before it goes tacky and we put the next coat on. So I've just done the third coat of clear on the back, and that's now going to stay like that to completely set. I'll leave that overnight at least, so maybe 12 hours or so. Once it's fully hardened, then we can actually rub it back. But it's looking very glossy. It's very nice. So moving on to the front panel now, I've just put some screws temporarily in the bottom so that it sits off the bottom, because it's going to drip quite a bit. And I've actually sanded it down to make it rough, just so that the epoxy has got something to grip onto as well. And I'm going to cut my piece, get that so it fits over it first, and then we'll mix it up and put down our base coat with the pigment in it. So I've cut my piece. I've still got quite a bit left that I can use for other things, and that's the top and the bottom. Basically those two bits cost $16 for the whole roll, so works out cheaper than contact sticker paper, which is mad. Alright, so I've put the base coat down on my front panel on all the parts where the carbon fibre is going to stick around the outside as well. And then I'll leave that for 3 hours to get tacky, and we'll put the carbon fibre on top of it. Well, it's in the vacuum bag now, but that was the most difficult thing I've had to do. It just kept on lifting at the edges. It wasn't quite tacky enough. So that was a real challenge. So we'll just have to see how it works out, but I'm going to leave it for a few hours in the vacuum bag and see how that works out. Well, I left this overnight. Let's see what scenario awaits us when I open it up. So, a modicum of success, as they would call it. It has actually worked, which I'm amazed. Amazing. So, I'm going to need a little bit of work here to basically trim it up and so forth, but it's actually worked. I'm amazed, because that was really difficult. Well, it's coming together. What I did was I put a knob on there and just cut around a little bit so that I can put the carbon fibre on the walls in there. and they're going to have stickers on them anyway, and then the knob's going to go on top, so it doesn't matter that some of the carbon fibre is peeled back from the bottom there. It's all good, you won't see it once it's back together. So now what I'm going to do is put a clear coat of epoxy on it and basically wet it down, and then put it back in the bag and vacuum seal it and let it properly bind. And I'll probably leave that for most of the day, I think 8 hours, 12 hours or so. Let's see how it looks when it comes out of the bag. So that's in the bag. I just made sure it was really tight around the edges and really squeezing it in to get more of that shape of where the knobs actually go as well. So I'll leave that all day and take it out tonight and see how that goes. All right, so I just debagged, or whatever you want to call it, the top part, and you can see it looks pretty rough at the moment. When you pull off the peel ply, it leaves a very matte finish, which lends itself well to overcoating. Where the material couldn't get in here, I'm actually just going to use my Dremel and just clean these out here. These little bits where the actual little decals go, I'll leave them till the end as well. They're sort of hidden in here. But yeah, that's where the knobs will go there. This is where the logo is going to be, so I'll actually cut that out at the end, I think. And the holes I'm actually just going to drill out from the other side once it's done. And yeah, so this is a very rough state. Obviously this is the back panel here, which now has the carbon fiber. This hasn't been sanded back yet, so it has to be sanded back and then recoated. You can see it's got some runs around the edge, so I'll get this so it's really flat and smooth. And then this is my top section here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lacquer the whole thing, and then at the end, that's when I'll actually cut out around here, which is where the switch inserts go, drill the holes. And you have to imagine how it's going to look in the end. I think it's going to be really good. It's going to be... So now I'm going to go and sand it. Make sure it's all flat over, and some of these bits are just cut out here, and then I'll lacquer the whole thing and do multiple coats like I did before every couple of hours. But for now, I've got to get stuck into smoothing up some of these sections. So I just spent what felt like ages trimming this off, because after looking at it, I decided that it's better to trim all these areas out before putting another layer, or the 3 layers of epoxy on, because it's so tough and I don't want to have to Dremel it and miss and accidentally cut some of the plastic. So I did that really painstakingly with a razor and got really nice edges on it, and the center as well, and cut out these sections, which are the decals or decals, whatever you want to call them, the decals for the knobs. These little bits of clear here are just where the creases were for the peel ply that were on there. So I'm just going to rough it all up to get rid of those. But it's pretty good. The edges need to be smoothed as well, and the bottom side's pretty clean. So yeah, clean that up. And also this was difficult to to cut these out so the knob fits in there properly. But when this is all, has the clear on it, I think it'll look really stunning. So it just looks like I've cut most of the carbon fiber off, but actually I've only cut out these channels here. So once it's got the lacquer on it, it'll be nice and lustrous again. This is probably the worst that it will ever look. So yeah, next stage. So I just spent an hour or so smoothing it all out, and this is where you get to see how it looks for a little bit. Here I'm just going to wipe some cleaner on it, and you get to see the carbon fiber grains again. But yeah, that's getting close. And I think next step is to lacquer it up, do 3 coats, see how it comes up. So preparation is everything, as they say. So I've spent a lot of time cleaning this up with grease and wax remover. And I've also put some little carbon fiber inserts here in the edges just to complete it, because some of that had sort of scraped off. There's a few little stray fibers, but they'll settle down once I put the first coat on. And yeah, just put a nice even coat over the whole thing, then let it sit for a few hours, and then continue, do it again. So here we go. Well, there's my first wet coat. It's great working with carbon fiber because as soon as you put a little bit of gloss into it, it just comes to life. It's fantastic. So yeah, I just put quite a light coat actually, but I made sure that I got all around the edges and got some of the gaps. Yep, so now we'll just leave this for about 3 hours. 2 hours, 2.5, we'll see. It's pretty cold in here. It's about 10 degrees. So usually at 20 degrees, it takes about 2.5, 3 hours. And we'll see, it might be a bit longer. I'll set the timer, I'll come out and check if it's tacky and put the next coat on. And we'll try to build up 3 coats today.
Many hours of sanding later.
So, a little experiment. In all of the pictures I've seen of the knobs, they're glossy and not matte like you get from a printed part. So I've mixed up some epoxy with some black pigment, and I'm going to paint that on and see how they look when they go hard, but I'm pretty sure it'll give me the finish that I want. So I've just used some sticky tape, which I've folded over, stuck onto a piece of plastic so that they stay put, and let's give them a coat, see how they turn out. There's the first coat, and I put a little smear on the side so I can check how tacky it is without actually touching the part. So we'll actually let them sit for a couple of hours until it gets tacky, then do another coat on top, and maybe another one after that to get it nice and thick and plasticky looking.
Wow, it actually worked. I noticed on the picture too that they had like a base on them with a hole where the number can be seen through the hole. So I quickly made one of those bases up and stuck it to the bottom of the knob as well. Oh, so here I used modeling clay to protect the areas I didn't want the resin.
So I can't help doing a mock-up test fit because it's coming together. Each step you do just takes it closer, which is pretty exciting. It's just amazing to think that it just came from a spool of plastic. That's it so far. So the next issue I've got is this. I haven't even done any sanding or any cleaning up of the epoxy, and obviously I need to drill out the holes properly so that clean all that stuff up and actually countersink the screw holes and all that sort of stuff. But the main issue I've got at the moment is the knobs don't quite fit because the lacquer is too thick and the knob has to fit in there, quite a tight fit. So I've come up with an idea that will help me actually ream these out smoothly so the knobs fit.